The Hall of First Bonding was ancient beyond memory. Its stone pillars had been carved before the Galactic Accord existed, before the Veth Collective charted the stars, before any species in the known universe had dared call themselves civilized. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the rafters, and the floor, a single slab of obsidian black Ketherus stone, reflected every being who stood upon it like a dark mirror, showing them what they truly were. Today, it was showing a human. His name was Alex, 23 years old by Earth's reckoning. Brown hair, brown eyes, medium height. Nothing about him suggested power. Nothing about him suggested destiny. He stood at the center of the bonding floor with his hands loose at his sides, wearing the plain gray tunic the Accord issued to all trial candidates, and he waited. Around the elevated gallery above, hundreds of alien observers filled the seats. Diplomats, scientists, warriors, historians. They had come from 47 worlds to witness the trial of bonding, the most sacred test in the known galaxy. It was the moment when a being offered themselves, completely and without defense, to a Sora, one of the great soul beasts of the Vel Nebula. Creatures of pure empathic energy, ancient and imperious, who chose their partners across thousands of years of history with devastating selectivity. In 42 centuries of recorded trials, no Sora had ever chosen a human. In the gallery, a tall Veth delegate named Day leaned toward his colleague, a scaled Korath female named New York, and whispered something in their clicking tongue. New York's neck frills fluttered in amusement. Nearby, a broad-shouldered Mer warrior called was snorted, a sound like grinding granite, and said nothing because nothing needed to be said. The contempt in the hall was quiet, professional, and absolute. The only one not sneering was Emma. She sat in the observers section, gripping her datapad with both hands, watching Alex below with an expression caught between terror and fierce pride. She was human too. Alex's research partner, his closest friend for 6 years, the one who had spent 3 sleepless months translating the Sora communion texts so he could understand what he was walking into. She had begged him not to do this. He had smiled at her, that infuriatingly calm smile, and said, "Someone has to go first." At the far end of the hall, the Sora emerged. Even the snickering stopped. It moved like weather, like something between a storm and a thought. Its body was translucent, shifting between shapes that suggested wings, or antlers, or hands, settling on none of them. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, were 2 points of silver light that cast no shadow. It was 12 meters tall at its smallest moment, and when it breathed, the temperature in the hall dropped 3 degrees. Its name, the closest translation, was Me. Me was the eldest of the living Sora. Eldest and most feared. Most Sora were aloof. Me was something beyond aloofness. It had not bonded with a being in over 600 years. The last partner it had chosen, a Keth High Sage, had spent 40 years bonded to it and died, by all accounts, in a state of transcendent joy, saying only that the experience had been too large for any single life. Me had been present at 22 trials since then. It had looked at 2,000 candidates. It had chosen none. The gallery began to murmur again. Day leaned forward now, curiosity replacing contempt, because no one had expected me. The Sora who appeared at trials were usually younger, more sociable. Me's presence changed the mathematics of the day in ways no one had prepared for. Below, Alex did not move. He looked at the great soul beast as it drifted toward him across the obsidian floor, and he did not flinch, and he did not perform. That was the thing Emma had helped him understand from the communion texts. The Sora did not bond with courage. They did not bond with intelligence, or strength, or ambition. The texts described what they sought in a single word that had no clean translation: high. The closest approximation in English was something between wholeness and willingness, the state of being entirely, uncomplicatedly present. Not brave, not fearless, simply here. Most candidates, facing me, felt the urge to prove something. Alex just stood there, the way he stood in his lab when he was thinking, the way he stood on rooftops watching rain, the way he stood at Emma's door at 2 in the morning when she called him because the grief had gotten too large again. He stood the way humans stand when they have stopped pretending. Me circled him once. The silver lights of its gaze moved over Alex slowly, the way a scholar reads something unexpected in an old text. The hall had gone absolutely silent. Well, had stopped breathing. New York's frills were flat against her neck. Day was standing, without having decided to stand. Me circled him a second time. Then it stopped. It lowered itself, its enormous, shifting, incomprehensible form, and it bowed. Not the abbreviated gesture of acknowledgement. Not the formal tilt of the diplomatic vocabulary. A full, deep bow. The posture of profound recognition. The posture the ancient texts reserved for one thing only. A Sora greeting its chosen partner for the first time. The sound that broke from the gallery was not applause. It was something older, involuntary, the noise of hundreds of beings having their understanding of the world rearranged in a single instant. Up in the stands, Emma pressed both hands over her mouth, and her datapad fell, and she did not notice. Below, Alex placed one hand gently against Me's great brow, the place the text called the contact point, the threshold, and he said something too quiet to be recorded. Later, Emma would ask him what it was. He would say, "I told it I was glad it waited." The reception afterward was held in the Accord's East Wing. Refreshments for 47 species, translated music, the careful social choreography of 100 diplomatic traditions. Alex stood at the center of it, slightly bewildered, holding a glass of something blue that a Keth attendant had placed in his hand with great ceremony. Joe, the Accord's senior bond registrar, a small, ancient Peth being with 6 arms and enormous patience, was explaining the procedural implications of the bonding to him in calm, methodical sentences. Alex was listening, nodding, and looking mildly overwhelmed in a way Emma recognized as genuine. She was watching from near the window when Day approached her. The Veth delegate was tall. They always were. He regarded her with the careful, assessing expression of someone who had been wrong and knew it. "Your colleague," he said. "How long has he been studying the Sora texts?" 3 months, Emma said. "With my translations." A pause. "That is not long." "No." Another pause. What did he understand that others did not? Emma thought about 6 years of watching Alex. The way he listened. The way he never competed with anyone's pain. The way he sat with silence without trying to fill it. The way he had held her hand at her mother's funeral and said absolutely nothing for 4 hours because he had understood that nothing was exactly what was needed. "He doesn't perform," she said finally. "He just is." Day was quiet for a long time. Then, "In 600 years, me chose no one." "I know. It chose him in 4 minutes." "I know." The Veth delegate looked across the room at Alex, who was now apparently asking Joe how Sora navigation worked, with the expression of someone who had just bonded with a 600-year-old cosmic entity and was already curious about the practical applications. Joe was answering with 4 of their 6 arms, gesturing simultaneously, which Emma had learned meant genuine enthusiasm. Day said something quiet in Veth, which the translator rendered as, "Humanity is stranger than we believed." Emma smiled. "We get that a lot." Later, much later, when the hall was empty and the diplomatic vessels had begun to depart, Alex stood at the great window of the Accord Tower and looked out at the nebula where the Sora lived. That vast, glowing architecture of gas and ancient light. And me was there beside him. Not physically. That was not how it worked. But present, the way a deep sound is present even when you stop hearing it. "Hi," the text had said. "Wholeness. Willingness. The state of being entirely, uncomplicatedly here." Emma stood next to him. She didn't say anything. He didn't either. After a while, she leaned her head on his shoulder. He let her. The nebula burned quietly, 600 years of waiting finally, perfectly filled.